What exactly is housing AI as you see it?
Housing AI is an AI-powered assistant built specifically for the social housing sector. Overall, it saves time, increases efficiency, provides clear and structured responses to any kind of housing query.
People are against AI, don't like it, don't want it. I don't agree, but what are some of the other barriers to entries and some of the issues that you've seen so far in trying to implement this practically?
I think there's an element that people don't understand it. And I think there's an element that actually don't appreciate that already using AI a lot already in their day-to-day lives. It's just not badged as AI. We want to be able to make a difference in social housing.
Why would they not just go on ChatGPT and put their answers in?
This is a question I get every time I demo it. And
Jenny, Lee, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
As we always like to start, as you know, do you mind just by introducing yourself and also kind of introducing Healthy Home Hubs? If we start with you, Jenny.
Yeah, well, let's start off with Healthy Homes Hub. So we're excited to be able to bring this new platform to social housing. So it's free access to all housing providers. And we're looking to really help create more intelligent clients in the social housing sector. We know everyone is time poor, but there's so much change that's happened, not maybe from a regulation perspective, but from an innovation perspective. And we really want to be able to help organisations understand in bite-sized chunks how they can create and maintain healthy homes. And the reason why we've positioned around healthy homes is there's so much money that is going to be spent before long, both on the operational side as well as actually the whole decarbonisation side. And we really want people to think about putting health at the heart of it. Because if we have health at the heart of a home, we naturally decarbonise the home. If we put decarbonisation and net zero at the heart, one, residents don't really understand what we're talking about, but two, we don't always end up with a healthy home. And we've seen that too often. So the whole element is around what do we need to create a healthy home. So those, we've got lots of tips and hints around actually what creates it, but also those enablers around that resident engagement, which is so critical, and how do you finance it? So that's generally what Healthy Homes is. Lots of different ways to engage, depending on people's learning styles, from podcasts like your amazing one, through to webinars, masterclasses and in-person events.
Amazing. I mean, I've seen you guys everywhere, so I'm sure everyone else is the same, right? You're all over LinkedIn, so that's great. And Lee, just an introduction to yourself, mate, background.
Yeah, hi. So Lee Reevell, Chief Innovation Officer at Healthy Homes Hub now. My background is 25 years in IT and digital transformation. I've been in the social housing sector for coming on to 15 years now. I worked for Holton Housing as the head of innovation and architecture over there. And Jenny and I started Healthy Homes Hub up about 12 months ago now, and it's been an exciting ride, to be honest with you. It's great to be here today to talk to you about it.
Nice. I can't wait. And we're talking about something that's topical at the moment, so we'll get straight into it. I think what we're talking about, and I suppose if one of you could just start by explaining what exactly is housing AI as you see it.
So Housing AI is an AI-powered assistant built specifically for the social housing sector. It's a standalone tool, doesn't integrate into anything at the moment by design. It's designed to answer sector-specific questions around regulation, best practice, compliance, and all those sort of things. It includes all the latest UK legislation, policies, social housing insights. Obviously, make sure that it ensures impartiality, so it doesn't recommend any specific companies or providers, and essentially just streamlines access to knowledge. So the sector's under there's a lot of demand on people within the sector, and the resources are low. We went through a huge part, a year or so ago, didn't we, with inflation running high. We had damp and mould come in. We had Grenfell and the building safety case. So there was a lot of action that needed to be taken. And when you can't increase your rents because of caps and things like that, you have to do a lot more with the resources that you've already got. And I started to play around with AI kind of five or so years ago when it was in its infancy, really. And when I talk about AI here, I'm talking about generative AI rather than the other flavors of AI that are out there. And I think it's important to differentiate that, because generative AI has kind of come into its own, and everybody will have seen ChatGPT. They will have seen Google's offering, which was originally Bard and now is Gemini. You've seen Anthropic's Claude, and you've probably seen, X's Grok as well. So there's a whole host of these large language models that have been taught on all the information that's out there on the internet. So housing AI kind of narrows that knowledge down a little bit. It's very specific to social housing. So ChatGPT and all those others are very wide in their knowledge. They've been known to what's called hallucinate in terms of coming back with answers which aren't necessarily in line with what you're kind of thinking. So we've narrowed that down a bit in housing AI. We've got a repository of knowledge that sits in the background that Jenny and I have curated alongside the regulation and alongside the legislation which is out there as well. And we update it on a regular basis. We use all of the content from Healthy Homes Hub, also goes into that knowledge base as well. So there's a lot of context around stuff. So it's not like throwing a question into Google and having to kind of put your own context around it. It can help with that as well. And I think overall, I want to give people time back, because I could see when I was working, in the sector, in a housing association, how busy some of my colleagues were. And it wasn't for want of trying to do better. It was just the lack of resource. So giving people time back, I think, is super important in what we're trying to achieve here.
Which is really exciting. I thought this would come at some point, weirdly. Like, I actually was thinking, it's not going to be far until this is being used in loads of practical ways in our sector. But talk to me about, in layman terms, I suppose, about what are some of the practical uses we could use it for? What are some of the things that you will expect someone to apply this product to?
So interestingly, I've run a couple of demos for people, and the questions that come up are always quite interesting. And I always get performance anxiety on behalf of on behalf of housing AI, because I don't know what it's going to come back with, although I know what's in there. So it allows people to get kind of quick and accurate information on those regulations and policies. So things are changing all the time. You've got to keep on top of that. And when you're at the front line, it can be quite hard sometimes to do that. Where do you get these new ideas from? How do I manage within these resource boundaries? So it can give you guidance on tenancy law, for example, understand repairs, resident concerns. I think one of the great use cases for it is the ability to converse through writing letters to residents, but then also kind of to change the tone of the messages as well, dependent on what type of resident you're speaking to. So you might have one letter, but if you can change that up within a couple of minutes to kind of reach out to different cohorts. And also, you can change language as well quite easily. So you could write it all in your native language and have it go over to whichever language that you prefer or your customer prefers. So, it's been aiding teams in compliance, so ensuring there's up-to-date understanding of things like consumer standards and such. Reduces the training burden as well, I think, on a lot of new kind of starters as well. The sector's changed, hasn't it, quite a bit since COVID hit. There's a lot of people who are hybrid working, remote working, those new people coming up through housing maybe don't get those interactions that they used to have in the past when they were working on the ground with people. And again, those people are resource bound. So it gives that new staff kind of the ability to ask questions. And obviously there's no stupid questions, and this housing AI isn't going to come back to you and say that. So overall, it saves time, increases efficiency, provides clear and structured responses to any kind of housing query. And if it can't find any information on what you're asking, it will drop back to its standard model and give you the answer that perhaps a more public system would. But we make sure that the information that it's trained on and it's fine-tuned on is very specific to social housing. So it's got our tone, our voice. It knows about the issues that people in social housing are facing on a daily basis. So it's much narrower than that broader kind of the public offering that you can get out there.
Nice. Jenny, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that I always talk about, which frustrates me, is that we've got 1,600 or so housing providers across the country, and we've got 1,600 organisations all trying to create the same documents. And I quite often use ventilation strategy as an example, because of, some people had ventilation strategies, but obviously everybody needs to have one as we think about the proliferation of damp and mould. but we don't need 1,600 versions. We just need a handful that we've got within Housing AI. And actually, it may not get you 100% of the way there for your organisation, but if it gets you 80% of the way there, actually that's going to save, as Lee's already said, a huge amount of time and resources. But that's the same for policies, that's the same for other strategies. It's bonkers that we're all trying to be able to do the right things for the residents and spend our money on the frontline services, and yet we're all employing a whole shed load of people writing policies and strategies, which actually, at the end of the day, we're all pretty much doing the same thing.
I always used to hate starting with a blank page. If you'd asked me to write an IT policy or or whatever policy, IoT, then staring at a blank page for me was the worst bit. To be able to come up with like a wireframe or a straw man for the task at hand, I think is super helpful. And sometimes it does get there in one shot, but you're utilising it like a colleague. You know what I mean? Someone said to me, it's like having a PhD in your pocket with no lived experience. So you're actually giving it that context, and it'll give you the detail.
Yeah, I like that. And look, what are the barriers to entry here, right? So if I just look at my sector, people are against AI, don't like it, don't want it. It's going to replace all of our jobs, and we're going to end up in a sector with all. I don't agree. I've never agreed. But like, what are some of the other barriers to entries and some of the issues that you've seen so far in like trying to implement this practically?
I was going to say it's exactly those things that that I think it's the same across all industries. That I think there's an element that people don't understand it, and I think there's an element that actually don't appreciate they're already using AI a lot already in their day-to-day lives. It's just not badged as AI. So I think a lot of this is just around the education. We've certainly had a number of early adopters that are excited about this and working with us to help develop it. We don't want this to be our baby. We want it to be the social housing sector to be able to help generate what we want to be able to move forward. We have some great ideas around what that can look like, but we need to work with those to be able to help educate others to say, actually, this isn't scary. This is effectively a big library that we've got. We're just helping you be able to get the information really quickly, and you don't need you to remember your library card. You just have to use Housing AI.
Yeah, love it.
It's giving people access to information easily, isn't it? I mean, how many times have you gone to your SharePoint system or your document information system trying to find a piece of information that's written in a policy? And then when you do find the policy, you have to then find the specific area that you need. You have to contextualize it. You probably have to go out to somebody to ask if you kind of write in the way that you're thinking. If you can ask a question of a document, of a policy, then it will bring it back within the context that you have given it. And it means you don't have to spend all that time looking through that information, to kind of get to the point. And then I think, you can and then have a conversation with the document almost as well, kind of like a what if. And there's some great, some people come back to me and said, it's fantastic, because I've asked it how I can support customers, how to engage with them in like retrofit and things like that. And Housing AI come back with a snippet of information that was in one of our podcasts. I think Ruth Dent was the lady, and it comes back and says you should use postcards. You should, that are kind of like that confetti moment, and it brings back that sort of insight and those best practices that other housing associations have used and have become successful with. And quite a few of the HAs that have joined us so far on the journey, they've given us copies of their policies and procedures, obviously anonymised, completely anonymised, to put into the system to then, to enrich it, I suppose, and enable other people who come along at a later date who mightn't have that, that information to pull it out. And there they are, they've got that template.
That's one of the rules, isn't it, Lee? That actually to join, you've got to share at least one element of best practice. So that's what we want to be able to do, because we want to. People are a bit coy as well. Actually, there's some bloody good work out there that actually we just need to be proud of. That's part of it. Very small fee to be able to then to join, but actually it's the sharing of the information we want. We want this to be the way that the sector shares that best practice.
Yeah, I had someone on the podcast the other day, it just made me think of it then, where we were talking about collaboration in the sector, and everyone wants to collaborate, or they say they want to collaborate. And I think I'm not seeing that in practicality terms yet, but I do think there's an appetite there in some places. And they were talking about, why can't we share repairs? Why are we still doing repairs in locations we can't reach? And having someone do one repair down in Norwich when someone else could pick that up for us. And it was that kind of thing. But I presume the success of this tool and the success of your business will come from that collaboration and that sharing of best practice, so the library's kept. And I've got some questions on that later, but how important is it to get the message out there and to educate? I presume that's going to be the key thing, educate housing associations that actually the more sharing we do, the better this is going to become for everyone.
Yeah, well, we've been champions of data and sharing that, your data gets more valuable the more you share it, because actually you can then start layering it to get that information in. And I think we trip ourselves up sometimes with the GDPR and a lot of the data and governance, where people are so worried about making the wrong mistake that actually we end up being in a position where we're just completely crippled by it. And I think that's the bit that we've got to challenge ourselves on, that actually it isn't about holding on to data and not sharing it. This is actually, we get so much better being able to do it. And I think you're right. I see a lot of people that wanting to be able to collaborate and share, but a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Yeah, that's also true.
You only share it with somebody that you know, rather than actually I can share it across, how do you do that? So this is a way to be able to then position that. And we, as Lee said, we're using the podcast and other things to feed into there, because it doesn't have to be a document. It could just be the way that you are doing things. Your approach to things is always best practice. So there's so much within there, and there's some fantastic work that's going on that you see, James. I'm sure in the podcast you do. It's been able to then share that and people to steal with pride that actually, this is something to use, and let's share it and implement it.
No, I love that. And I love the use case for it. And I was going to ask this later, but might as well do it now. But what safeguards have you put in place to make sure that the info that is coming out is accurate and it's not based on opinion, and it's giving legitimate and trustworthy advice to housing associations? Because that'll be the nervousness, right? We've all done a ChatGPT search on something and gone, not sure that's right, actually. Let me just go and fact check what you've said there. And it's 9 times out of 10 right, but it's not always right. And in housing policy, people want 100% accuracy. So how have you dealt with that so far in the journey?
We do have to caveat with, you should always check what AI comes back with, regardless of how many of those kind of guardrails are put in place. We update it from the government's website on a very regular basis, and we've got quite a strong roadmap on how we're going to continue doing that in the future as well. At the moment, you can't upload anything to it yourself by design, because I thought that would be a good guardrail to put in place, because IT departments are obviously quite, concerned that people might start putting customer information in these things. But when you start to think of it like that, it's very much just like Google or Bing or whatever. You wouldn't put customer information into that. Don't put customer information into this. So we do have all the latest and greatest, and I test it on a regular basis. If I want to get a little bit more technical, when you fine-tune a large language model, it has something called a temperature. And the higher the temperature is, the more random the feedback is from it. And that's where you tend to get hallucinations. Because we are working with regulation, policy and procedure, the temperature in ours is quite low, so it will come back with exact quotes and things like that. It can still contextualize, but that is in place. But again, I would always recommend that with any of these things, like if you were Googling it, you need to check afterwards to make sure that all of those sources, all the information is correct. I can guarantee the source for you, and I think over time it's only going to get better. I have had one occasion where someone's come back and said something's not quite right here, but that's been a very easy change on the back end. What we're looking to do in the second quarter of this year is pull together a group. So it's, to actually look at some of these outputs. What Jenny and I don't want is it to become biased in any way, because it's been the stuff that we've curated. So I want people who are external to Healthy Homes Hub to actually trial it, because this product is for the sector. It's not necessarily directly for us, although we utilize it on a regular basis ourselves. There is guardrails in there, and there is plans to then test those guardrails with real people in the future as well. I'm quite interested to pull together that team, that ethics and bias kind of team, to understand, what they think of it, because it's almost like letting your baby out to play, isn't it?
yeah. Are people going to love it or not?
You don't want to say anything rude.
Yeah. What? Because I don't believe this. You've already answered this question, but I want to say it because I think the audience will be sat there thinking, okay, why don't I just use ChatGPT? And I think I know the answer, but I want you to give me the answer because I think it's pretty obvious. But why would they not just go on ChatGPT and put their answers in?
This is a question I get every time I demo it, and sometimes people like pull up ChatGPT next to it and let's ask the same question, and that for me that's like oh my goodness. But we have trained it on a narrow set of data in comparison to, say, for example, ChatGPT is very wide. It knows the internet, which is everything. Our one is focused specifically on this housing knowledge base that has been curated. It goes out to the government website to pull that latest information. It's using the transcripts from our podcasts for that best practice. It's taking the articles that we're publishing on our website and putting that in there as well. So everything is contextualized around those kind of like foundational pillars of regulation. So yeah, how ChatGPT, Claude, all them ones, very, very wide. Us, quite narrow. For that reason.
I was going to say, James, the other thing is that people have been very generous as we're talking about the collaboration with articles that aren't available on the internet either. So their own strategies and other documents, which actually they think the sector will benefit from. So again, the more that we get to share, the more that richness continues. So it is trying to make that social housing bit that actually if we all share something, we all benefit by being able to get access to a far richer solution.
Yeah, and you've both worked in housing associations, right? And I obviously have my own business, and I look at our OneDrive sometimes and think, even if I wanted to find the thing I'm looking for, there'd be no way I'd be able to find it anymore because there's no way of indexing the information or getting the data out of individual documents. You're kind of like flicking around your Word documents on your laptop thinking, I know it's here somewhere, but it's not. So it's also an efficiency.
Yeah, you've got to be able to do a bit of a interrogation. It is absolutely, and I think we've had examples where people are using it for member inquiries and things, and when people are just another one Lee's talked about is when people are joining an organisation or actually suppliers that are working on the outside of social housing when they've been looking at it. Just some of those things that would take you a little while to be able to then find. It's just the easy answers.
Yeah, and are we saying then, just to be really clear, that this is an evolution product, whereas the more we share, the better it gets, and the better it gets, the more rich the data gets, and then you wrap around some compliance, and all of a sudden you've got an absolute ready-made product that's got everything in it, pretty much.
What we've got at the moment is the worst it will ever be. It's only going to get better every day, and it's good. And it's good now, but it's just that the technology on AI particularly is changing so fast, which we're developing our roadmap to be able to keep in line with that. But also, as you said, bringing the more people that get involved, the more we share, the better it is. And we want to be able to make a difference in social housing. We think the best way that we can make a difference, not only with the education that we're doing as part of the Healthy Homes, but it's to give people back time, because everyone is so busy inwardly focusing, not having the chance to lift their head up. In the work that we've done so far with organisations, this is saving between 2 and 10 hours a week. So we can effectively give somebody back a day a week, depending on their job role, which actually is quite game changing.
Massively. And I also think as well, like Lee said before, we're not trying to replace humans in this process. We're trying to make it more efficient. So you should never be using AI anyway to be the final thing that you produce. It should just be getting that blank sheet of paper to something 80% there. And then it should be, right, okay, I've got something to work with and I can scale up from this point. But I think that's a big point, is it's not going to replace anyone necessarily, but it is going to allow us, from a commercial sense, I presume, to be able to redeploy certain roles into areas that are going to be more front-facing and helping customers. So talk us a little bit about that, kind of what's the blue sky thinking for you both in terms of the product, and kind of where do you see this going in the future?
Well, we've got some interesting changes coming up in the future. We are going to build in the ability for people to connect their own documents to it in the next version. So that's not ready just yet, but it's on the plan. And also, you may have heard of AI agents being bandied around. So, the AI agent is quite specific in its knowledge, so even narrower than what it is at the moment. So we might start to kind of look at electrical safety, gas safety, and a lot of statutory stuff like that. But instead of mixing it in with the customer stuff, it's very specific and very knowledgeable on that. So your frontline workers, if they're out at a job, they can start asking it questions about compliance and ways to do things, and it can come back and assist them, and maybe that might reduce what the technical managers kind of back at base need to do because they've got that knowledge. So it's almost like it's having like kind of a handbook, isn't it? I suppose that you can talk to, and that's another feature as well that we've got on the roadmap is voice as well. So people who aren't sat at a desk all day, or have got like the mobile phone, a super mobile phone, they can actually talk to Housing AI in natural language, and it could potentially talk back to them. So it's almost like having that one-to-one type conversation, and that's available in other systems at the moment. But again, very, very broad. We want to bring that down to be very narrow for these specific kind of use cases, with the Housing AI kind of sat over the top of them. And we're getting some help from some organisations to make that happen. We've got a very exciting meeting tomorrow, which I can't divulge just yet, but I'm sure you'll find out about it on LinkedIn over the next couple of weeks.
I think the other thing that is, I think whatever you see, or whatever listeners see elsewhere from the changes in AI will be reflected from a housing AI perspective. But I think one of the things that we're going to have to get better at, which we're going to do some supporting training with, is actually understanding what prompts people need to use. And actually how to get the best out of the housing AI, because again, it's a bit like a whole range of stuff that a lot of people use Teams and things, and actually you can just interact with Teams to have meetings, or you can start really getting into it and making it work for you.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is just around, actually this is a new skill set that people need to understand of actually how do you create the right prompts, how do you work with an AI large language model to be able to get the best out of it. So I think it's a bit of both ways, not only the tech developing, but actually how do we develop to be able to then use the technology that's there.
It's really interesting, and you can start to think about how it could be used in the future. But have you given much thought to kind of how you could integrate this into the sector further? Like, what are some of the things that come up when you think about that?
There's lots of different things that people are bringing to us at the moment, which again, we're trying to be able to figure out whether that is, well, where it fits on the roadmap. The world's our oyster, I think, on this. And that's why we want to be able to get that group that Lee's talked about to come together, because we can go with, like you're indicating, we can go a number of different directions with this. We want people to feel comfortable with it to start off with, and to take people on that journey with us, because this is a product for the social housing sector. So actually, how do we do that? This isn't us trying to be able to drive through and think we know everything on it. We've got something we think is really great now. How do we use that, and how do we develop that moving forward? But yeah, we're pretty excited about what the opportunities could be.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years down the line, I see, and this is kind of like the lighthouse, I suppose, is it becomes an AI assistant that knows you. It knows your job role. It knows the business that you work for. So instead of you coming to it asking for information about policies and procedures and updates and all this stuff, it'll come to you and say, Mr. Strategic Asset Manager, there's a new policy procedure come out, and this is how you need to integrate it into your whatever. So instead of you coming to it, it's going to be kind of sat in your pocket, giving you a nudge about all this new stuff. So you're not having to keep up to date yourself. Well, you are kept up to date, but it's keeping you up to date because it knows what you're working on. It knows what niche you're in within social housing, because I think in social housing there's such a variety of different roles, isn't there? From asset management or the customer, and I think we encompass everything. So there is that. I think there's that need for, well, maybe not a need right now, but there will be a need in the future when people start seeing some of these more commercial AIs in their own life. I suppose it's when people started using Facebook and then Instagram, and then you started to see companies start to use Yammer and like Viva Engage and things like that, and it followed, didn't it? And when cloud came out and people were going, oh, people are using shadow IT, they're using Google Drive behind the scenes, and that, I think from people I've spoken to, is they know people in their organization are using these systems, and there's no view of it at all, governance-wise within the organisation, and they want to use these, but they don't want they don't want to be left exposed, I suppose, to some of the issues that may come with it. And I have spoken to a couple of housing associations that have put a blanket ban on AI until they understand it. And there's a balance, I think. If people are finding it useful in their real life, it's going to drip feed through into their work life. And why not? Jenny and I have leaned on AI in building up Healthy Homes Hub. It's an amazing tool that's allowed us to do a lot more than what we would have been able to do, inside our own heads.
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, I was thinking that then, right? If I'm a housing association right now, do I want to trust someone that intimately knows our sector and the policies and how it works and all that? Or do I want my staff to anyway go and use ChatGPT, and we can't even verify the regulatory standard of that product anyway? So we could end up in a situation where creating policies, and I've had it in my own business, so don't mind sharing, where people have used ChatGPT to do things and not checked the final product, like you said, Lee, and they've used it as the thing and then realised that, Z's in where S's should be and the stuff, and you kind of all of a sudden I start thinking, do you ban it? The other thing that I'm kind of sick of seeing is people using it for their own opinions, right? It's not there for that. So it's not there to give you an opinion on what you think. So I look at LinkedIn and I could tell you the AI posts from the real posts. And I start to think to myself, I'd rather have a product if I'm in a housing association that's been verified by an expert. And I can see AI niching down in the future where we don't want a generic AI. We want a niche AI that understands the thing we're trying to search intimately, I think.
Yeah, this is all just about saving time. A lot of this isn't, we're not necessarily going to create something completely innovative out of the solution. This is just helping organisations gather all of that information that is around to be able to help, as Lee said, have it at people's fingertips. And as the technology changes, the world's our oyster. And I think it's quite exciting if we can deliver cheaper services, get rid of the waste, and move that services into the front line. What's not to like about it?
It's democratization of knowledge, I see. It's giving people easy access to information. About the old days when, if you wanted an encyclopedia, you'd have to go to the library. Well, those days are long gone. Now you can get it on the internet. But now you can just ask the encyclopedia, so it's just an evolution.
Yeah, no, I agree. And guys, I've known you for a long time. I'm excited about your new venture, and tell us a bit more what you're excited about for Healthy Homes Hub as a general business. What's going on? What are you excited for in the future? Let us know.
We're really excited. It's landed really well in the sector. We've got just over 200 housing providers that have engaged with us, and there's a lot of industry members wanting to be part of it. I'm really excited where it gives a platform for those experts. And to me, I don't give a monkey's whether they're a contractor, a supplier, manufacturer. Actually, people have dedicated their lives to certain areas. Ventilation's, a great one as a great example. People have worked in the sector for 30 years doing that. They're keen to be able to then share that knowledge. And if we can act as that intermediate to be able to then help share that knowledge, it is absolutely not a sales platform. This is around that knowledge to be able to help social housing providers to be able to deliver better services. So I get excited that we get, there's conversations we have every day of people getting in touch and wanting to be able to share. And I think going back to that collaboration, there's a lot of people want to do it. They just haven't known how to do it. Yeah, and I think there's a bit of element of warming some of the shyer housing providers up of going, actually, it's brilliant what you're doing. You just need to come and talk to us about it and share it. And, it's really heartwarming to see the difference that people are making. And as more people are getting engaged in it, and you hear those conversations that you're not party to, where people are sort of sharing, did you know so-and-so's doing this, or they're looking at that. That's exactly what we want to do. We just want to make that difference to create more healthier homes that residents can live in. Amazing.
Lee, anything to add to that?
No, I think Jenny's wrapped that up quite well, actually. I mean, we want to improve the sector, and at the end of the day, we want to improve the lives of people who are the residents inside these buildings, and the people who work in social housing. My ex-colleagues from Holton did an amazing job. They just haven't got the resource, I suppose, they need to be able to take it, and I think that's the same across the sector. So giving them time back by giving them something like this, I think is absolutely key. And being able to collaborate better and share those success stories and even those failures as well is huge. What is it? Do you say what is 1,600 registered providers doing the same thing differently? Super frustrating. Why can't we? Or we should be doing things, and we are doing things now. We've set into motion collaborations. Jenny's run the Retrofit Society now for a number of years, and that's a great collaboration of social housing providers. And then we've got a number of other things on the cards as well that hopefully will make their way out into the public eye around data and things like that. So keep your eyes peeled.
Amazing. And look, if I'm sat there listening to this or seeing you on LinkedIn, how do I work with you? What's the practical way I get in touch? I obviously will put your emails and your contact details and your LinkedIn's in the show notes, but how do I work with Healthy Homes Hub if I want to? What's the process?
So if you're a housing provider, as a local authority, combined authority, ALMO, whatever that looks like, you just get free access to everything that we've got. So you just need to be able to register at healthyhomeshub.uk, create a password, and you get access to everything. That's free events, in person and virtual. And if you're in industry and want to get involved with us, then get in touch with the website the same way, or drop us a message on LinkedIn. We're getting more people every day wanting to be part of it. And if you've got some great stories to tell, we're eager to listen.
Amazing. I love it. So I think it's going to be innovative. And I love that you're using technology to create more purpose in our sector. So well done to both of you. I love watching your journey, and I can't wait to get you back on in 12, 18 months and see where we are at that point. But thank you for your time and appreciate you coming on The Hip.
Brilliant. Thanks, James.
Welcome. Thanks, James.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Hip. If you'd like to hear more from us, please be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast platform. We are also running a 30-minute clinic free of charge to any clients that want to recruit in a more inclusive way. For more information, please reach out to us on our website, andersonjames.com.